Alright guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to do the a53 5G, which was recently released, and the version we're doing is the Metro by T-Mobile version, just so you guys know, so we won't be confused about any tech specifications. So with that being said, let's hop right into this review. Let's talk some specs and see if this phone is actually worth the asking price. Alright, so to start this video off, I will say to all the new people, subscribe as usual. To all the regulars, what's up? We're back. We're going to talk about this. Also, in the description of the video, I do have timestamps for those that don't want to watch the whole thing, want to skip to certain parts. So with that being said, let's hop into it. So when you first buy the a53 5G, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I originally wasn't going to get this phone because I already knew it was going to be similar to the a52 5G. It wasn't that much of an upgrade, and it's not so much more they can do at that price point without undermining the S series. So if you notice right away, the box is cut in half. I can tell you why right now. I already took the charger out of the box, but it uses the USB-C to USB-C, similar to Apple, and that's the only thing that comes inside the box. There is no more charging brick. I know, it doesn't make any sense, but this is what they're trying to do. So I guess that's probably why the phone actually dropped in price, because the original a52 5G was $499. This one is about $449 or $459. But if you're a Metro user, you can get it for $49 as a port, as a new line, or if you're adding a line, you can get it for $199. So you do have some cheaper options. I personally did the add a line to $199, and here is the phone right here. So it does come with the little SIM ejector tool, some little books in the inside, which we're not even going to look at because most of the time these books don't teach you anything to begin with. So with that being said, let's look at the design of the phone. So what you're going to notice right off the back is that there is no headphone jack on this phone whatsoever. Basically you just have your USB-C charger port. You have your SIM tray right here, which does allow you to actually have extra storage, such as SD cards and whatnot. The phone itself is 128 gigs, so that's something to just be aware of. The Metro version and T-Mobile version is 128. If you do get one that is more than that, like more internal memory, then it has higher RAM also, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So 6.5-inch screen. I already have a tempered glass on my screen. That's where the bubbles are. The camera bump, as you can see, protrudes, similar to the first one, but it's less of a camera bump and less intrusive than the a52 version, which stuck out a lot more. So it does have a more sleeker looking design. As you can see, it's a super fingerprint magnet, and I actually have a OtterBox that I keep on this particular phone. So fortunately, I won't have to worry about all the smudges. Your lock button is on one side, and your volume rockers is also on the same side. Older Samsung phones used to have the volume rockers on the left while the power button on the right, but they, for whatever reason, went with this design. Personally, I wish the but the lock button was a lot bigger, or it had the fingerprint sensor in this button, but it doesn't. It does a on-screen fingerprint. Let me turn that on for you guys. It does a on-screen fingerprint in addition to having face unlock. So very, very similar to the a52 of last year. It does have an IP67 rating for dust and water resistance. So for those that are looking to make sure that, you drop this bad boy in the toilet, you go into the rain, you might forget it outside for a few minutes, meaning it falls out of your pocket and you go looking for it, and your phone should still work. So with that being said, that's pretty much it for the design. Like, I do love the way they did this design right here, so the camera doesn't just stick out 3 inches from the actual phone itself. I was never really a fan of the phones where if you tap it, this still does that, but it doesn't, what's the word we're looking for here? It doesn't sit flat on the ground, but it still does have that option where it's the camera bump isn't too big. And of course, for those that are trying to preserve their phones, always get the tempered glass on the back of the phone. I didn't get mine yet, but they do sell them where you can get them on the back of the phone. So with that being said, that is it for the physical design. Outside of missing the headphone jack, there are some upgraded features that we're going to talk about in terms of like battery life, but to be honest, a52 user, you guys are going to probably want to stick to the phone that you already have. As for the software on this particular device, this does actually launch with Android 12 and the Samsung UI 4.1. The processor is the Exynos, I believe it's the right Exynos 1280, so they're not using any Snapdragon processor in this particular phone. I'm guessing, to be honest, I can't even give you a reason why they're particularly using that. All I can say is that we're going to talk about the processor in a little bit and how well it performs in certain real life situations. For the average person, this isn't going to be an issue whatsoever because you'll have talk, text, you'll have web. The 5G actually runs very, very well. I don't have any problems with drop Wi-Fi. It does well in that aspect. But once you get to more technical aspects, and we're talking about gaming and actual video editing, things like that, it does have some hiccups. But again, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, if you go to the Samsung website or you look at some articles, they claim that this phone is going to be similar to the a52 5G with getting years worth of software updates. So I don't know how true that is. Sometimes phones are dependent on sales on it. They don't get the software updates for 4 years, but this should get 4 years worth of software updates. We're talking close to Android, I guess 16 or whatever it is Samsung gives you, along with security updates and things like that. So for those that are interested in buying this particular device, especially if you pay full price for it, obviously you're not going to want to have to buy a new device next year just to keep up with the software and the UI, the Android version, things like that. They do plan on actually keeping this bad boy updated at all times, so that it is something to think about when you decide to purchase this particular device. So the display, Super AMOLED still, so that is something for you guys that, you know, sometimes with a lot of the lower or mid-tier Samsung devices, they don't all have the Super AMOLED screen. Granted, it's a lower version of what the S series has. It's still better than a lot of these IPS cheap displays that other carriers, Motorola and other people actually give us for a particular price point. So you have 120 hertz, which you do have the options in the settings to actually go to your display and change how, oops, I said wallpaper. Go to your settings and actually change how well, like the vivid the screen is. You can change the natural colors, things like that. You're actually able to change the motion smoothness, where you can go between 120 hertz, you go between 60 hertz. Now, obviously, when you go to 60 hertz, it's going to give you a much longer and better battery life. Not so much that it is noticeable when I did use the phone that the battery life was a couple hours better in my opinion, just based on my usage of the phone. I didn't have to charge it as much. But if you're going to have a 120 hertz phone, let's be real here, you want to keep it where it's super smooth and it looks really, really good. On the other hand, the highest nits, which is the brightness, goes as 800 nits, which is not bad for a mid-tier device. We're looking at a 1080 by 2400 pixels with a ratio of 20 by 9 or by 9, however you want to say it. So the pixel density for this particular phone is 405, which is not bad at all. Now, again, for those that don't use screen protectors, don't use cases, I'm going to be honest with you, tempered glass is always a yes for phones because it's necessary when you drop it. If you don't have insurance, you're going to end up just pushing $400 and something dollars for the phone, nearly $500. But if you have insurance, depending on your carrier, it could vary. I'm just going to take a guess here. 9 times out of 10, this phone is probably going to be about $100 deductible or so, because it actually is cheaper than the a52 5G. So I would assume that the deductible would be between $100 to $125. But just be aware that it's based on your carrier, so don't take what I said to life. I'm just giving you an estimation on that. But if we're talking about the screen, like I said, when you're outside and bright lighting and things like that, if you turn up the brightness, it is easy for you to see the screen. You probably will get some reflections, especially in this crazy bright sunlight. So there's nothing you really do about that unless you're willing to buy a phone with a much higher display. But because this phone is, I gotta be honest with you, because this phone is actually, what's the word we're looking for here? It's in the US, and because it's sold by carriers, prepaid carriers alike, most people are going to actually buy phones that they know of with the companies that they're aware of. So there are better phones out there for the price point, but we're talking about phones that are being sold in the US that actually have insurance and coverage where you can get your phone replaced in a day or two rather than a week, or if you buy these phones that normally come overseas. So with that being said, that is the display, very similar to last year's. That's why I say it's not that huge of an upgrade. So we finally made it to the section that's going to matter to a lot of people. We're going to talk about the gaming and then the performance. So the first things first, when it comes to gaming for this particular device, as you can see, it's taking a second for the game to actually load. What I've noticed about this particular device, that it does have its hiccups. It does have its problems when it comes to how smoothly games actually run on it. Call of Duty is one of those games where I always felt as if most phones, this is a standard, whether this game doesn't take too many resources to actually play. There are actually low tier devices that can play this just fine. Now, granted, I am connected to Wi-Fi right now, and it's not that good based in the room where I am. But as you can see, as I'm moving around, my character hasn't even loaded up really. On top of that, I didn't do all the, well, no, I did actually do all the downloads for all the resources. It does have an option for HD textures for Call of Duty, and this is how smooth it's going to run. So in terms of touch, it's going to be very, very responsive when playing the game. You will have a couple hiccups here and there, as I'm going to show you as you're playing. Well, I say as you're playing, as I'm playing right now, I am going to show you some of the hiccups that this has. What I will say is that, to be honest, the performance for the A52, in my opinion, was much, much smoother than the A53 when it came to the gaming. If you're looking at this now, looking at it through the camera, it doesn't seem like it's as smooth as it is. But while I'm actually playing it, I don't have any issues whatsoever. Like I said, the odd part that I did not like about this particular phone is the fact that this thing, what's the word I'm looking for here? It only allows you to play up to normal graphics on Call of Duty, while the A52, I believe, went up to high or very high. It did give you the option. It just handled gaming much better, in my opinion. Let me put this in a camera view for you guys. It's not bad. So if you're playing games like Call of Duty, you're one of those competitive players, it is possible to still have this phone running pretty okay for you. But for the most part, you're going to come across a little hiccups, a little stag, a little lag here and there. Not so much for Call of Duty, but more so for just games in general. In addition to that, I had tried this with Genshin Impact. It's a no-go. Like, it does play on low settings for Genshin Impact, but it has a lot of stag and a lot of lag, a lot of stutter. And to be completely honest with you, I understand that it's a mid-tier phone, but for a game that popular in the performance, it's really underwhelming. So I'm going to go ahead and be honest with you guys and say, I give it about a 7 out of 10 in terms of gaming capabilities. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong. If you're playing regular games, basic games, you tone the graphics on certain devices, certain titles, I mean, it will work for you. If you're playing Raid Shadow Legends, amongst other things, it will work for you. So that's a good thing. That is a good thing. In addition to that, again, the price point for this phone, especially for those that do new lines of service, $199. If you're porting, the phone is $49. They still do sell A52 5Gs under Metro by T-Mobile, but it's more of a you get it as they come basis at this point. So yeah, this is average. It's not the best performance in the world, but it does excel at certain games. And I don't want to keep repeating myself, so be aware of that. If you're buying this for strictly gaming quality, it's a possibility that you will be sorely disappointed on that end. So like we talked about earlier in the video with gaming tests, you just saw that in real time with Call of Duty, and like I said, it did sell pretty well. Once all the assets loads in, you're perfectly fine. What I will say, if you're switching between applications like you watching YouTube, which is possible on Android devices, while playing games or doing certain things, just be aware you are going to experience lag and stutter and whatnot. Now, for right here, we're going to talk a little bit about performance. Now, the performance I'm telling you guys about isn't for the average user. This is more so for someone that's looking to do some type of productivity. Now, for me, I just came from an iPhone 13. I gave it to my wife. She switched back over to Metro by T-Mobile. This is the reason why I bought this particular phone, the A53, for myself, to hold me over to the iPhone 14 comes out. And I use applications like Canva, amongst other things. Now, what I immediately noticed when you're looking at productivity applications and things like that, this particular device is substantially slower than your average phone. No, I'm sorry, not average phone, high-end phone. I apologize, let me get that correct. If you're used to coming from an iPhone, you're used to coming from an S21 Ultra, S21, or for the most part, any high-end device within the last couple years, you're going to notice slowdowns for this particular device. If you tap on certain things on Canva, takes longer for certain pictures and things to load, while other applications just normally loads immediately. Granted, that was very fast, so I'm not trying to just be a stickler for certain things. I just want people to know that once you actually start using presentations, you start using pages like this, it takes much longer for the presentation to load. If this was my Apple device or my other Samsung devices, this would have loaded by now. But because of this processor, it takes this long to load this amount of pages for these ads. Granted, it's still not bad at all, especially for those that are starting out and doing new things, but the phone does seem to actually underperform. So if you receive a phone call during this time, you might experience some lag. If you're text messaging, you might experience some lag. Another example of this is UCut video editor. This is what I actually use for when I cut videos in YouTube. allows you to convert your video and put it all together, add your drops, whatever it is that you want to put in there, and then you're able to post your video. Because I'm doing a YouTube video. When I use this application, or if I'm posting a video directly to YouTube, the problem that this device has, and I can't stress this enough, is that you're going to experience lag, you're going to experience stutter, you're going to experience tons of issues and slowdowns when, like, if you're looking at stuff like regular text messages or surfing through the web. It was very frustrating at first, but then I even forgot, like, oh yeah, I forgot. In the background, the processes, it's uploading a video. So for those that have to upload a video from their phone, that use their phone as their primary device, I would really suggest uploading videos and doing your productivity part when you don't have to receive phone calls, or you're not going to have a long conversation. Of course, if emergencies happen, it is what it is, and this will be perfectly fine in that aspect. But with that being said, it's not a horrible device. Again, if you look at the benchmark scores, it does perform pretty okay. Like, it's similar to the A52 5G. It has a higher single core score, but the multi-core score is probably off by like 10 or 15, 20 points. So with that being said, like I said, it's still literally an upgrade to last year's device, but it's not an upgrade to an A52 5G user. So what we're going to talk about right now is the battery. Now, last year's A52, already, let me put this in there so you go ahead and see the little box and add a little aesthetic. And let me move my little sheet of paper out of the way so I can get my thoughts together. I like organizing each category, so I have a little sheet that gives you, let me show you guys, the categories of each thing. So there's that, so I don't forget key features. So with that being said, without my rambling, the particular device right here has a bigger battery than the A52 of last year, 5G. Remember, I'll compare it to the 5G. Excuse me, the 5G had an A52 5G had a 4,500 mAh battery, I believe, while this one has 5,000. So theoretically, you are going to get better battery life than that phone, and because they perform similarly, you should be perfectly fine. Now, the A52 5G also runs Android 12, and it should get a couple more years worth of software updates. So for those that have that phone, remember, if you go to a Metro by T-Mobile store and you get an A52 5G, guess what? That phone is $100 as a new line, versus this one is $200 as a new line. Some people prefer just the newer phone to say that they had it, you know, vanity thing, kind of like me. But with that being said, this is my daily driver that I use. So for videos that you see moving forward, I'm going to use this particular device. I'm a person that uses a device so you guys can see it in real time. I'm sacrificing myself for you guys. But anyway, it still has 25-watt fast charging. That's how much it supports. So if you have a 25-watt charger, you'll be perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be a Samsung 25-watt charger. It just has to be the USB-C on both ends, meaning USB-C goes into the phone right here. And then on the other side, it'll be USB-C, and you can use like a fast charging brick. You can even use an Apple charging brick, my 20-watt one, and it works perfectly fine. You can use Anchor bricks. You can use a 30-watt charger brick or the 45 with Samsung, and what happens is it'll still say super fast charging on the device or fast charging, and it won't go over the amount of recommended wattage for safety reasons. So even if you use a higher wattage charging brick, just be aware that it's not going to overheat your phone. But I think you should probably use a 65-watt OnePlus charger or something. Sometimes you just got to just be safe. Safety is key here. So it also supports, what is it called? Fast charging. So based on estimates that I did of just using this device in real time, I would say you get about 50% charge in 30 minutes or so, which is pretty much the industry standard for Apple and other Samsung devices. When it comes to 0 to 100, that's a different story. I didn't do that full test. Now, there is something that I actually want to show you guys. Let me just make sure I can find it while we talk. There is an option in the phone where it's like this adaptive charging that, what's the word we're looking for here? Let me see if I can find it. If I can find it, here we are. So if you go to what I just went to, more battery settings, you have the option to turn off fast charging if you're not interested in that, and that will actually allow your battery to last a whole lot longer, but it would take probably over 2 hours to charge your phone, and let's not go back into the Stone Age with that one. You have this option called Protect Battery to extend the lifespan. So what it does is when you get to 85% of the charge, it'll actually slow down your charging over time. Some phones, like Apple devices, have adaptive battery charging where it actually looks at how you use your phone It limits the battery usage for other applications. It says it right here. It'll stop certain processes of certain applications, so it can actually have the longevity of your battery life better, along with your processor itself, so it won't overheat, it won't freeze, and have other types of issues. Apple does that automatically, so you don't have to go to the settings and mess with that. But with Android, you do have the option to clear your cache amongst other things between applications. You have the option to show your battery percentage. If you take that off, it goes right off. If you tap it on, it goes back on. Slow charging information, so it'll actually let you know how fast your charge, how long it'll take for your phone to be fully charged when you plug it up. It'll be a little on-screen setting, which you do have the option to turn that off. Of course, we also have display settings like most Android phones have, on-screen display, yada, yada, yada. But I tend to skip that setting because that's not life or death when it comes to phone. You guys are probably more interested in performance and things like that. So if we're talking about the battery, whatever battery life in terms of charging speeds that you expected out of the A52 5G, it's practically similar to this phone right here. So yeah, it's not that huge of a difference, like I was saying before. So just be aware of that. So this section right here is going to be the camera test. Now, normally what I originally was going to do is go outside and take different videos and cameras and pictures and angles and all types of different things. But then I told myself, you know what? I'm just going to get down to the nitty gritty of this particular camera. Now, the front camera has 32 megapixels, believe it or not, which I think is nuts for a phone, a phone and a half. But remember, you have to remember that most people use FaceTime, not FaceTime, but Google, I forget what it's called. It's called Google something, for it to look at actual videos on their phone, or they have video calling, put it that way. And what I instantly noticed is that when you switch it over here to the front camera, right? This says that it's a 32 megapixel front camera. Now, every tech spec, every video that I saw says that this bad boy has, what is it? 4K recording. I'm gonna be honest with you. Maybe I don't know how to use my phone properly, but normally when you go to the settings of a device, well, this actually lets you know you're using 32 megapixels right now. I never saw an option on this device that actually, even in the settings, that gave me the option to ever put this thing on 4K 30 frames. I was looking for that. I was hoping that it had 4K, but I don't actually see it in the settings. So maybe I'm wrong. You guys can give me a hand with that. I don't see anything here that says 4K. So let's go ahead and switch back. Now, there is an option right here. Well, before we even do that, let me go over here, because there are more modes such as pro modes, slow, food, yada, yada, yada. If you go to pro video, things like that, it does give you the option between Ultra HD 30 frames, Full HD 60 frames, and put that back up so you guys can see that, Full HD 30 and HD 30. There is nothing here that literally says 4K. I haven't seen anything that gave that option. I don't know if the 4K version of the device are the ones that have higher end, more RAM or things like that, or international version. I don't know. But the version I have from Metro by T-Mobile and T-Mobile itself, I don't see anything that has 4K. Now, the reason that I wanted to do videos right now instead of going outside for you guys and taking crispy, clear, beautiful pictures, because if you're outside in different lighting, this phone is going to excel in pictures. It's going to look beautiful. It's going to look crisp. You're going to like it. The problem is I am in a low light setting. I'm actually in my dining room. I have one light on in here right now for the video purposes. And as you can see, this is how the camera looks. It doesn't have like great image stabilization. It does have image stabilization, but you have to make sure that it's on a particular setting before you can even use it. So if it's on Ultra HD 30 frames, and then we go to the settings over here and look at video stabilization, it's not available with Ultra HD, which I'm like, what is going on? Like, why would they cut corners on the camera? If we do full HD, still no video stabilization. If you go ahead and do 30, then video stabilization pops up. So the worst settings on the phone have video stabilization. I think that's insane. I don't know why they would do that. It's like they really, really cut corners on this particular camera. And even if we go to the actual, let's see here, let's go ahead and tap back. Let's go back to regular photo mode. Photo mode, it had the option, obviously 64 megapixels. You can do it by 3x4, 9x16, 1x1, full screen. You do have different camera options. Of course, you have the fun mode, which allows you to put little silly things like, what's the word we're looking for here? Butterflies and things like that on your face. Obviously, I'm using a box right now, so it's not going to pop up. So it does have the modes for people that have different timestamp camera. It does have modes for the people that have different personalities that want to try different things for the phone. It's not horrible. It's not a bad camera, but it's nothing compared to a high-end camera. To be honest, it's not even better than the iPhone XR camera, and that phone has been out since, I don't know, 2018 or so. So the camera does run very well. I haven't had any issues with the phone being super hot. Let's talk about the actual lenses itself. You have four lenses right here in the back. Let me wipe that off, a little dirty off the table. Oh, shaky cam. You have a 64 megapixel camera, main. You have, it's just a wide camera. You have the 12 megapixel ultra wide. You have the 5 macro, the 64 depth, which is literally the same thing as last year's phone. You have your LED flash. If you saw the options, you have HDR, panorama, amongst other things. The phone's camera is nothing to really be right home about. Again, there are other devices out there like the Nokia X100 and other devices that actually rival this in the benchmark scores and run just as well. Obviously, those things don't have years worth of software updates. They don't have the Super AMOLED screen. So there's a lot of things that you're getting with this particular device that is better than a lot of the mid-tier phones in the same market. But what I will also say is that unless you're getting a carrier deal, to me, it seems very difficult. I'm sorry, I have something called timestamp camera where it actually shows the settings and the time and everything where you are when you take a camera. So because of the work that I do, I use this particular camera. So if someone says, no, that's not true, this didn't happen, this wasn't delivered, bam, have it in real time. So anyway, with that being said, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. But again, keep your expectations to a minimum. This video is more so for people that are considering upgrading from last year's OnePlus N10 5G, people that are considering upgrading from an A52 5G and are trying to jump to a mid-tier rather than a low-tier phone. Even though the A32 had like a Snapdragon 720 in it, whatever it is, this will still run better than that phone to a certain extent because this has a higher resolution screen. The other one has a lower resolution screen, so some apps could run more flawless on it. It's hard to say, but it is only a 4 gig RAM phone, the A32 we're talking about. So with that being said, this is the camera. Again, I was going to show you some flashy pictures and go outside and take silly selfies and all that, but no, I'm going to be honest with you. This camera is average. It's nothing special. It doesn't have great image stabilization. When you look at the front camera, again, it's nothing special. The cloudiness that you see in this video is exactly what I see in real time. Remember, this iPhone 13 is recording through this, and iPhone 13 is not going to, it's going to pick up every little subtle thing. Granted, the colors are it's a little bit tad washed out because it's recording through another screen, but if we're talking about the smoothness of how my hand is moving and things like that, that's exactly how this camera looks. So get what you purchase. So all in all, do you think this product is worth purchasing, Ian? I'm going to say yes. The reason I'm going to say yes is that, just like I said, this is very similar to the A52 5G of last year. If you're coming from an A52 phone already or an A51 5G, sure, it's a minor upgrade for A51 users, but for A52 users, not so much. Again, if you're concerned about the software updates, you're going to get roughly 4 years worth of software updates. If you still have this phone after 3 or 4 years, you're going to notice obviously considerable lag times or probably things like that, depending on how well the processor keeps working or how degraded the battery is. You should be fine. The average person can use the phone for years upon years upon years, and it'll be perfectly fine. And I think that for that person, this phone is good for them. For you guys that are doing YouTube videos and productivity, sure, it'll be good enough for the time being. But what I also notice, even Motorola devices have 4K on their cheaper devices. And I noticed that a lot of these mid-tier phones are starting to back out of making their cameras better. They're rolling that back, taking that feature away from us to try to get us to have the incentive of buying higher end phones. I don't like that, but again, most of the mid-tier market isn't really going to realize that, especially if you guys aren't big on using cameras. But someone like me that uses this every single day for every single thing that I record, it's a huge downgrade in that aspect. But again, performance is pretty fine. You get lag and stutters here and there when you're using multiple applications at the same time. You do have the option in the settings right here to actually change your display where you can swipe up, swipe to the side, like the typical Android phones that you see. But I will say that they will slow down your processor, and it does give it the lag that I saw. So when I switch back to the 3-button thing you have right here, I didn't have any more lag. So for those that like the little bar at the bottom of the screen, as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and show you that before we talk about that, before we close off this phone. Let me see, it would be in, home layout, I believe. I forget where it is. It may not be a home layout. It might be in, not lock screen. In fact, it might be in display. Let's try that one. Yes, navigation bar right here. So if you look at the swipe gesture right here, where you can swipe up at the top of the screen, because it takes more processing power to do that, and I know it sounds crazy, like what are you talking about? The phone actually slows down when using this setting, the swipe gestures. The buttons, it's much better in my opinion. It made my phone run a lot smoother, and quite frankly, I need smoothness in my phone. Of course, if you lower the resolution of the screen, meaning make it 60 frames, then you're going to really experience slowdowns. But the phone is going to actually, what's the word we're looking for here? It's actually going to run in certain applications and games worse than before. So also be aware of that. But again, like I said, this is the closing arguments of the phone. Yes, it is worth it for a new person that's coming to Metro by T-Mobile. You can port and get this phone for $49. Regular price is like $449, almost $500. It has the decent Super AMOLED screen. The 800 nits is not bad for a device of this caliber, because most other phones are much lower than that. Screen resolution is the same as last year's. Super AMOLED is the same. Camera's practically the same. Speakers is practically the same. I forgot to mention the speakers, but speakers are practically the same. And what I did also notice with a lot of these devices is that they started lowering the quality of the speakers, which is kind of a ploy, in my opinion, to make you buy Galaxy Buds and other earbuds and things like that. But it works well. It does very good. I don't have any major issues with it. Again, like I said, I'm going to use it for my upcoming videos, so you can see the camera quality yourself in real time. So potential YouTubers that may not have $1,000 to buy an iPhone, or $800 to buy this, or $800 to buy that, will be able to see the camera quality and different lighting effects and say, you know what, I am willing to use that. And that's all that matters. You got to start somewhere until you can afford what you can. So with that being said, yes, it's a yes, not a major yes. It's a yes for those that are switching and are using low-end phones and are trying to go to the next level. It's a no for those that already have a mid-tier phone around this caliber with a Snapdragon 750 in it, a 765G, whatever it is that you have. If you have a Snapdragon processor that high, it's not going to be a performance booster for you. If anything, it's going to be the same thing, and you're going to be sorely disappointed that you spent that amount of money, unless you're planning on giving your phone to somebody else and you just wanted the newer model. So without me rambling on anymore, because I talked enough, that is the video. Like I said in the beginning, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.